Cool. Well, Luke, you started off this whole journey really with putting together some initial demos after we had a chat. So what was that process like for you? How did you go about that? And yeah, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, it was just a really awesome and exciting experience. Initially, you kind of just sent me over a few demo tracks of the songs from the album. And it was just like a basic vocals and maybe some guitar or piano. And from there, we just kind of explored some ideas and kind of spent some time listening to the songs, listening to what God wanted to say through the songs, spending time in the themes, and then just kind of spent time playing along and just kind of asking God what he wanted to do through the songs and what he wanted to say through the music. So yeah, it was just a really great experience just to kind of be a bit more creative, I think, than what we'd normally do with the songs, because we kind of would try and aim for the music to be a bit more congregational, but this one was a little bit different and it was a bit more relaxed and a bit more of an acoustic feel, which was really exciting.
And I think we ended up with like strength in that, haven't we? Because it's very different from like a normal like church album, but I think there's some real strengths in the fact that it's not congregational.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a bit more easier to kind of just listen to in the background a bit, especially when you maybe having a quiet time or washing up or doing things like that, where you can almost have your own personal experience with God in those moments. And yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it was definitely, I think, for me, first hearing them, it was nice to kind of have it, but with a different aim rather than, this is for like a Sunday, we're writing for church to sing on a Sunday. And actually, like when I first heard them, like there was kind of like a bit more than put together like than when you started working on them, Luke. But that kind of, it gave like some substance to it, but at the same time, it kind of left enough of an open door and a blank canvas to be able to listen to it and go like, right, I can see this going there, or we could do this and layer this with that. So it really left the door open for like a lot of creativity for it, which for me was probably one of the most exciting things about hearing them for the first time and letting your mind just kind of imagine what it could be.
Yeah, it's quite rare that we get the opportunity to like just like that moment of opportunities being sparked, and we could do whatever. It's an exciting time, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it was really cool to have those initial ideas laid down, and then we were able to reach out to a few more people in the band that we thought would have certain skills and feel for this type of music that we're trying to produce. And yeah, it was just really exciting to pull them in, send them some of the demo tracks, and then come together in a COVID-safe way when we were allowed to, and just kind of play the songs together, get a feel for where they were at, and listen to the bits that they'd kind of created in their own time when they were listening to the songs. And it was just really exciting to hear it all come together. I think at that point I was just like, wow, this is a really cool project, and I'm really excited to kind of hear the end point of that. So yeah, it was really awesome.
And it was interesting as well, you said like everyone did their bit from home, and normally for something like this we'd get everyone in a room together like at very, very early stages and start forming the arrangement there. But because everyone had their own bit of, they worked on it by themselves, they took it in a direction, another person took it in another direction. So we ended up with loads of ideas which we could then bring back together. And yeah, I thought that was a really, really interesting time.
Yeah, I definitely think that kind of one of the nice things about it was not having any restrictions in the same way, because I think when we've written in the past for church on a Sunday, there's been a distinct aim and there's like an accessibility, there's a real value in that. Whereas this has just been like, there's kind of no boundaries, like let's see what we can do with it and where we can take it and where it ends up, and take everyone's like individuality with their instrument and kind of add the stamp on it and kind of take the best of everything and just like create this really good blend, which are like, these are all like the people that are involved in it and in church, and bringing that all together into one like body of work, I think is really special.
Yeah, I feel like you can hear everybody's individual part, like you can hear everyone's individual strengths and their gifting and what they bring to the table. You can hear like elements of everybody's throughout the project, which I think is really cool. And I think it was an interesting experience, wasn't it, as we took the songs a bit further to then started doing like overdubs for like adding the vocals and that sort of stuff, and having to do it in like separate rooms miles away from each other, so that we made sure that we were like COVID safe. And fortunately God was with us and we didn't have anything like be passed over by anyone. But yeah, it was an interesting time where, again, normally we'd do it in a slightly different way, but I think it all worked really well in the end. And so yeah, then we started like moving it back into the studio then, and like properly getting down into into the depths of it and forming the finished result. And that's always an interesting process, isn't it? You kind of like you live with these songs for like such a long time, and you like they start to almost in one way they start to wear off on you, but in other ways you start to notice and love things about them that you never really noticed the first time you listened through them. So yeah, how did you guys find like the first time you heard the finished songs, or what impact was there in your life as you lived with those songs?
Yeah, I think for me, those songs are almost a bit like the soundtrack to my coronavirus pandemic. Because I'd been listening to them for so long now, from the initial demos through to the pre-production, and then when we got the whole band involved. So like I've spent a lot of time listening to those songs, and I think it was just so timely. I think I've been so encouraged, and I feel like God's really spoken to me through those songs during this time, and just reminded me of his faithfulness and his goodness. I think there's quite a few themes of that run through the songs we've got on this album. And I think, yeah, it's just been just so amazing to see everyone come together and like almost like that image of the body and everyone having their own part and all coming together and God moving through that. And it's just, that's just been really encouraging to me to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think they kind of capture, they're kind of like an of-the-moment thing, like for our church right now. I think the last time we sat down and wrote and kind of produced some songs out the back of it was a very different thing a few years ago to where we are now and where we have been through this. Like the whole thing has kind of been written through the pandemic, which is a unique thing in and of itself. And for me personally, like one of my favourites on the EP is Jesus Faithful. Everyone will have their different ones, of course, but like for me, that's just the one that really resonates with me. As soon as I heard that one for the first time, I remember just absolutely falling in love with it, and I've listened to it so many times, and it's one of those that for me, I have not got bored of it. Could still keep listening to it, and just I think the simplicity of that arrangement, and indeed with a lot of the others, and the simplicity of the message. For me, it's just that reminder through this whole time when stuff's been up and down and kind of crazy in its own unique way. But remembering, Jesus is faithful. Like he's the rock which we stand on. That has been so precious to kind of like hold on to and be reminded of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think similarly for me, I think the lessons that we've learned over lockdown in life in so many different ways are going to be lessons that we live with for the rest of our lives, really, and we'll be able to pass down to others. And I think these songs in some way capture a moment and capture lessons that we've learned in this time that are going to be transformative to the rest of our lives. I think the song House, which talks about how God breaks down the things that we rely on, breaks down our walls, breaks us down to in some ways like just a vulnerable and an open thing before Him, and then He builds us back up on His foundations. I know that for myself, over the past lockdown has taken off a bunch of the things that we used to rely on, and a bunch of the experiences that we used to rely on, and a bunch of the stuff that we used to do, and it's all that's been taken away by coronavirus, and now we're left. And Jesus has sort of, for me at least, restored those foundations of where I stand, the rock on which I stand. And so, that song for me has been particularly poignant in this time. So how, like, obviously we can't wait for everybody to hear these songs. How would you like to see God use them?
Yeah, I would love them to be used almost as a key to just kind of unlock just personal encounters with Jesus in people's own, like, in any time really, whether they're just hanging out with their family and listening to it in the background, or they're on the way to work listening to it in the car, walking the dog, or changing a nappy or something like that. Like, I would love for these songs just to be a way for people just to hear God speaking to them, and just to move in those moments of the ordinary where God can kind of make them a bit extraordinary. That's really my heart for those songs.
Yeah, I think what you said there about in the ordinary but creating the extraordinary, I think that would sum up kind of everything that I'm about to say on it. But they're not really kind of songs that are written to be like, these massive declaratory, shout it out loud, like that kind of thing, dancing around your kitchen or whatever. I don't know, for me, I kind of see them as almost like these songs that are like put on, be it in quiet times or like driving home from work in the car or whatever. That's almost like intended to be in the background, but there's something about it, like one line or one lyric that's for that moment in that time in someone's life that just pulls it right into the foreground. And all of a sudden, this thing that was intended to just sit in the background and fill out some space creates this really poignant encounter with the living God, with Jesus. And that marks a moment and changes a moment. And there's a little moment in that person's life where actually heaven comes to earth and something changes. That's what I don't know, that's what I've had in my head and would love to see from it.
Absolutely. I find that they're really like, they're stilling, aren't they? As you said, if you both said, like having things in the background, after a stressful day, driving home, you put those on in the background and they just sort of still you. And I find the lyrics interesting because they're truths and promises from God to us, but almost from our perspective a lot of the time. And it's just sometimes, like, as you say, Mark, just that one line will be particularly helpful in that situation that you're facing, and you can just have these songs in the background, but that one line will capture your attention and just give you a reminder of God's faithfulness again. So I'm really excited to see them and see how our church are going to use it, and it's how it's going to bring fruit in people's lives. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's this kind of unique blend in it as well. Yeah, there's this blend through the EP with there's some familiarity in it with some of the songs we've been singing on Sundays over the past year, couple of years, whatever, and some other stuff that's kind of like almost purposely kind of written for this. But the stuff that's like familiar that we've been using on a Sunday sounds and feels very different on this now. And take some of those lyrics like, would you capture my attention? But even just putting like a different sound and a feel to it creates a whole unique kind of background and landscape behind those words.
Absolutely.
Which will hopefully take it from being something that's just an encounter from a Sunday and creating that Monday through Saturday like encounter with Jesus.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something in the simplicity of the songs, how we've kind of stripped them back. So there might be songs that we recognize that we've sung on a Sunday, but actually, like Mark was saying, they sound quite different now. And it might also like kind of inspire something in you to kind of approach maybe your quiet times slightly differently, or approach the way you're reading your Bible slightly differently, just by this kind of inspiration and this change and of things that you're used to and things that you're used to hearing. Things I think we're used to worshiping in a particular way, but the pandemic's changed that for us now. And in this time, we've had to kind of adapt. And I think these songs are a really good example of that adapting the way we're approaching worship in our own personal quiet times, because we can't do it congregationally like we used to. So I think these songs are a good example of like adapting in what God's doing and like kind of moving with him and hearing what he wants to do and following that movement and stepping into it and allowing him to move, I think.
Yeah, totally right. It's like a metaphor, isn't it? The whole project is like a metaphor for COVID, where everything has been stripped back, and what is real and true is what remains, and everything else is gone. And we've adapted and used that to form this new reality. It's like, it's almost it's a metaphor for COVID, isn't it? In our experience through that time. So, can't wait for other people to hear these songs.
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
Friends, yet the highest of